All right, let me make sure I'm closed out of Steam so I don't get any annoying notifications during this I'm sharing the screen. Let's see if we are live here. Got 20 of you guys here. I just want to make sure that we are here. Let's see. What's going on here? Jesus Christ, YouTube, are we live? There we are. Hopefully. Been live for like 30 seconds. Never got any notification for that. So at least we're finally there. All right. Go ahead and bring this up on the screen. I see we got some messages already. What's going on, Rick? Here's my autopsy. Bell, Custer, Gregson, Quaffle, Burton, DeBenedetto had 3 in the optimal. Look like the other 3 started in the teens. Going to look at that harder today. What exactly are we? I mean, that's yesterday, but was that? I don't believe that is the optimal. I'm pretty sure the optimal had Williams in it. Although that's Xfinity, who actually cares? Yesterday was actually like a really. It's very rare that I can actually get through a slate where like the projections and everything were like decent. All the variants happen to people who, weren't like, like the takeaways yesterday. Like when you're looking at NASCAR DFS in general, who I respect and I think played the slate correctly were the people who played Sam Mayer. Like if you played Sam Mayer yesterday, I think you played it pretty good. Variants took you out, but I think Sam Mayer probably would have kicked the shit out of Bell and Creed. I mean, real chance that happens, man. So there's a lot of takeaways, or there's always things to take away. And typically, whenever we lose a lap leader like that, I typically look to see like where was I wrong on, Sam, and I was completely wrong on Sam. If Sam stays up there, he probably dominates the race. I mean, we all got pretty lucky there if you didn't have Sam, and then if you did have Sam, that was just pretty unfortunate. But really solid day yesterday, very easily projectable. Whereas you come to today's slate, and this is probably and certainly for the rest of the year. But I mean, when we look at this race, like 4.5 hours, if not 5 here, deep into the night, lap leaders out the wazoo. Talked about in the preview video, at least in that sense of like that is probably what I'll start using those preview videos more, is just what happens in the race versus, who's worth looking at. But tons of lap leaders in these races, tons of lap leaders right into variance and being taken out of in the race. I mean, you make one mistake and you're breaking a toe link and your day is completely done. It's not even beaching yourself. It's not even, speed on pit lane, which can happen. Like if you even just look at the wall at the wrong angle here, I mean, your day is absolutely toast. Let me see what's going on here. What's going on VBP? And shoot, man, I don't think it's even being close. I think yesterday came down to a lot of situations where you probably had 5 of the 6 drivers who were optimal. Like it was very much a 1v1 of what happened, which typically that's all we can ask for when we look at like the top 100 lineups, the top finishing lineups and stuff. It was a lot of 1v1s. And even with that said, you may have had a lot of lineups like with me, I think I had majority of my lineups like finish. Let's see. Let me take a gander. Let me take a look. Let's see. Yeah, I had a lot of mine like in the hundreds. But really like it was a straight 1v1 of like, being, 30 points off the lead. That's like, Quaffle over like Gregson in some situations, or, Ryan Ellis versus, paying up slightly and building slightly different to get to like Josh Williams and stuff. So easily, like when you're looking at even like yesterday's slate, a lot of it came down to like 1v1s, which I'm very, very happy whenever slates come to that. Even with, the green white checker that we had to deal with. Let me bring this up on the screen. So today, when we're looking at people who are And yet again, if you were here yesterday, thank you for stopping by. I thought that was a very, very fun stream. A lot of people seem to enjoy it or at least when I showed the projections and walked through everything. I think that helped people understand at least how I approach it, just because there's more viewers, because NFL's here, which I will not be here next weekend. I will be in Atlanta, so no live stream for NASCAR next weekend, but that is the only one we're probably going to miss, because I do NASCAR live streams the entire season. Just that NFL week one, I think it'd be kind of suicide for me to be like, hey, Sheets, I know you got a lot going on NFL week one, but can you do a NASCAR stream? Like, I'm not going to ask that from them, and nobody would probably watch a week one stream anyway. Plus, it's Atlanta, so thank God, it lines up correctly there. But I'll keep doing my streams past next week because I'll be in Atlanta for that. But when we're looking at this slate, the last 100K slate for NASCAR, the last big slate and stuff, and we look at where people are at, you see Bubba Wallace up here, okay? And when we're looking at a race that we want to have, I cannot emphasize this enough, we want to have as many potential lap leaders as possible. Entering any given race at Darlington, we see, whether it be, I don't give a shit if it's 2 laps, I don't care if it's 135. We're typically seeing at least, 13 to 14 guys flirt with leading laps in this race, whether it be staying out, running slightly longer on a green flag run, short pitting to get the lead early, taking, strategies if we have cautions right before the stage, et cetera, et cetera. We have an absolute ton of potential lap leaders today. So when we're building lineups, and if let me go ahead and sort it like this. If we are looking at tiers or who's a good car and a bad car, okay, realistically speaking, and this is going to be, very black and white. This is just for the sake of determining who can be a potential lap leader, okay? Bad car, 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 bad car. And at that point, we have potential lap leaders. Okay, so if we're chasing to try and get as many lap leaders in this race as possible, we want to try and have as many good cars in your lineup as physically possible. Okay, when we're looking at a race that is nearly 400 laps, nearly 5 hours long, with a vast amount of people who can get laps led. Now, typically, you have to be a good car to do that. You can't just fall into the lead from running 28th all day, or from running back here. Like, we're not going to see Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton's a bad car. We're not going to see somebody who is here leading laps. But when we look at this race and where people are priced at and stuff, we look at where people are priced at. That means we're going to have quite a lot of guys in 7K range. We're going to most likely prioritize Martin Truex Jr. at 95, huge misprice, like underpriced to the Jesus and back, like a huge favorite entering this race. You probably want to have quite a lot of Denny Hamlin, okay, starting 14th, $11,000. Okay, so once we start chasing those people, you're going to see the 7K range look extremely well and look extremely appealing. Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Barry, Ross Chastain. These are cornerstones of your lineup. Okay. These are cornerstones of your portfolio. And this is a race where I would probably cap ownership to 50 on any given driver. I think you want a huge pool today. Clearly, way more than the normal, 13 to 16. This is a situation where you should probably be playing 25 guys. If you're 20 maxing, it should probably be 25 guys straight up. There's no way to there's no clue who's going to be the lap leader. We can look back at who's been good at Darlington, straight up, we have an idea. Oh yeah, of course, Larson, Reddick, Truex, Hamlin, Wallace, Keselowski, Buescher, possibly other Gibbs cars of Bell, other Hendrick guys, Byron, Elliott, whatever. It's just going to, end up happening that way. I think this is a very, very difficult race to project for. So now that all that has been spoken for, when we look at Bubba Wallace Pit lane number 1, starting on the pole. We look at Bubba as somebody who has been, the Darlington spring race, pretty much 6th best car. Now, people did run into issues there. We did see people, Bell and Truex had pretty abysmal days. Elliott had a pretty bad day. We had a lot of guys down here who were pretty poor. Okay, so even if that doesn't happen, we still see Bubba Wallace as like, 9th, 10th best car Darlington here. So when I'm looking at the builds that I'm using, and I typically don't like falling on people just build wise, but you're telling me I can get the pole sitter for $7,700 in a situation to where, Hocevar has speed. Like, this isn't shocking. Hocevar says he likes this car here. Like, that's not a shock. Briscoe, I'd be hard pressed to see like Briscoe stay up there, but like we're seeing Bubba Wallace at $7,700 be a pretty good looking projection point. Okay, straight up, unless he falls out of the like top 10 and just has a usual Bubba Wallace day. Fucking up on pit lane, depression, tropical depression in his head, just a ton of other stuff. The typical Bubba Wallace thing. Even if he does that, he's probably going to be like the 9th, 10th best driver today. Okay. If you start looking at any projection that gives Bubba Wallace like 40 laps led and 21 fast laps, like that's nothing even crazy. Finishing like 10th, 11th, 12th, real chance he's gonna fight for it. Okay. Real chance. I think it'd be very difficult for Bubba Wallace to finish lower than at a value in terms of DFS today. And this is, has Bubba Wallace ever won a race? This guy is horrific. Like, straight up, might be one of the worst drivers in the field. Okay. Won at Kansas, a track that the team dominated at. NASCAR gave him the win at at Talladega. Cheated at Michigan in the trucks. Like, what has Bubba Wallace actually ever done here? Okay. And before I get, a ton of stuff, like, straight up, I have been a Bubba Wallace man since the beginning. We got this is stolen valor. This ain't even this right guy. This is somebody called Darrell Wallace Jr. Okay. Like, dude, Bubba's fucking horrible. But DFS wise, starting first, 77, I'm gonna have so much money on Bubba Wallace today. It's not even gonna be funny. I think Bubba Wallace is a great play. DFS wise, I think he makes a ton of sense build wise. And he's really not even hindering your lineup at all. If you're playing Bubba Wallace, that most likely means your lineup has Hamlin, Truex, and or Larson in that, or at least two of those three. Bubba Wallace isn't even your primary concern in that lineup. Okay, he is just a filler piece to not have or a filler piece to go up directly against like Kyle Busch to try and outscore Ross Chastain at $300 more. Bubba Wallace's battle is with Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain directly. And because Ross Chastain is underpriced too, he's at $8,000. Like, Bubba Wallace, Chastain together, like, you kidding me? What a build here. Like, this is a race where you should absolutely diversify people and just get as many of those good drivers as we've identified, not even based on this, just price range. Like, we want to try and have at least 4 guys who can realistically lead laps. We're absolutely going to have probably the primary. We're going to have one of the 2 primary lap leaders today not finish the race. That is just how it's going to be. Driver X is going to go out there, lead 130 laps, hit the wall, break a right rear toe link, and finish 29th, 4 laps down. That is just how the race is going to go today. So when we're looking at volatility up top, when we're looking at lap leaders who will indeed get burned, who are absolutely not going to finish in the top 10 today, this is where you just want to spread ownership out. And Bubba Wallace makes a fantastic play today. Hocevar, $6,000. When we start looking at projections and stuff, like, Hocevar has not been bad in this car. Okay. A lot better than his teammate. Okay. Wow, man, jury's out. Hate to say it. You guys were like fucking 4 years too late. LaJoie's a dumbass. Like, he sucks. Like, why is that just news this year? The guy flips over twice and everybody's like, oh, of course, only LaJoie would self-spin and flip over. Like, what are we talking about? This guy was always bad. But you look at Hocevar here, okay, and you look at the the difficulty in passing at this racetrack, the high chance that when we start entering the first pit stops, now yet again, we could have yellows, but first pit stop, whenever that is outside of, and it wouldn't even be like at the stage, like people are pitting in between the stages here. We're probably going to look at 28 cars on the lead lap. 28, maybe 30. We're at least going to have like 6 guys a lap down, right? Entering that first pit stop. So, who is Hocevar competing against? When we're building lineups and you're looking at trying to get as many people in your lineup who can either A, lead laps, which should be the primary, each driver in your lineup, which I don't know, does the optimizer know this? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I hand build all my junk, but can driver A lead laps, or can he compete up there? Or what is he doing against the 6K range? When we look at the people around Hocevar, who is he fighting against directly? Okay. And I would argue that when you're in a 6K range, you are not necessarily looking up to the mid sixes. Like McDowell and Gillen are fantastic plays today. Okay. Which, I mean, just think of it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You play McDowell, you play Todd Gillen, who can both lead laps, who can both gain positions on strategy. You then play Bubba Wallace. Okay. You are left at 9,600 for your remaining 3 drivers. I mean, those are the types of builds that we would want to be looking for. Very high ceiling, 99th percentile outcomes on a race like this today. So when we're looking at Hocevar, if we're looking at Hocevar, we're not able to afford 6,800. We're not able to afford 6,700. So who is Hocevar competing directly against? He's competing against Harrison Burton, who starts 24th. Very unlikely Harrison Burton can really. Also, I mean, I haven't shown this on the screen. I mean, this is where we'll go ahead and remove this little fella. I mean, this is where everybody is on speed, on average speed, across the board on all these. I just removed Timmy Hills because he's not even in the what a move in chicane. I think NASCAR just paid him to show up. They were like, "Hey, Carl, man, we need some excitement here at Darlington. Can you have Timmy Hill just absolutely fuck people on the exits of these corners today? Absolutely be in the driving line, please. Just make Carl log. If you can make sure Timmy Hill is only getting passed by the lead lap cars on the exit of 4 and 2, that would be great. So that's why his laps aren't here. But any real shocks here, don't really see. So we can visibly see Priest, Dylan, regardless of what group they're in. This is Priest is not going to compete. He's clearly not going to be that type of guy. But we don't view Priest as that, as a potential race winner and stuff. The guy starting 30th. We have tons of stuff here seen where he typically falls in line at. And when we're looking at, actually, we'll continue to look through here. Just for the sake of being here and stuff. Typically, especially at a track like Darlington, the 2 groups will very much have different timeline or times on their long run stuff. So why even look at this stuff? We know where everybody's at. When we're looking at these races that are going to border 4.5 hours and stuff, it's very similar to esports. It's very similar to stuff that's projectable in a sense of once you start having longer matches, once you start having longer races, once you start having more matches, the variance, at least in the output of an individual driver, is lowered. If you have a short race, anything can happen. You speed in pit lane, you fall back, you can do well, you do whatever. Like League of Legends, like best of 5, or best of 5 in Counter-Strike. If you're playing a best of one match, that's one match. Variance is huge there. Once you start having more matches, the outcome that should happen will usually, render itself to coming through. You get a longer race here. The good teams and good drivers should be able to get through the field, get laps led, and et cetera, et cetera. So when we're looking at Hocevar specifically for that, you're looking at Hocevar fighting against Harrison Burton, Corey LaJoie, Justin Haley, Ryan Priest, and Nemechek. Because at that point, we're deep in the 5K range. The main guys Hocevar is going to compete against in potential DK points is really Priest, who starts dead last in this range. Okay. Haley's already 21st, and it's going to be really hard for Haley to really show up DFS wise, because we would probably expect Haley to finish like 18th, 17th in this race. He starts 21st. I mean, that's, he's close to where he's starting. Now his price tag does kind of allow him to at least like kind of survive in that range. But when you start looking at projections and stuff for what Haley's at, like Haley can, have a really good day, finish 20th in real life, and he's like finishing with like 24 points. Hocevar can, maintain a position because he's not going to be last. He's not going to get lapped. He's not going to be part of the first guys who get lapped. So like if we have, 27 cars in the lead lap at any given point, Hocevar is at least guaranteeing himself outside of, running into issues and stuff. He's not going to fall outside of that lap or that lead lap running position. So that increases likely chance that we see Hocevar, run inside the top 15 all day and stuff. Track position's huge here and everything. And so like, I don't think Hocevar is a terrible play at all. Yet again, I mean, this is going to be a race that like, I think projections are honestly kind of useless. Anything can happen. Like your main guys who are going to project well are clearly Larson, Truex, Hamlin. Let's take this off. Oops. It's like these individual drivers. Like clearly these would probably be in any projection sort you're using or any projection source you're using. It's most likely these guys ranked in the top 7 in some form or fashion. Once you get past that, you start running to, Bell, Bubba Wallace, and then place differential guys who can argue to, finish in the top 10 of like Chastain, Elliott, Kyle Busch, Logano, Bowman. Like these are the guys that you like want as many of them as possible in your lineup. I mean, that's kind of how I'm approaching the race today and stuff. Like I don't have a favorite to win this race at all. My highest projected guy is Kyle Larson. Like that's not shocking. Like I would be shocked if that wasn't the case. I think like my gut feel like who wins this race, it's Truex. But then again, like Truex is 95. Like why would you not play Truex today at 95? Why would you not play Wallace Day at 77? Like these are clearly prices that you can easily get to and then attach, Larson, Hamlin to these guys. Like, and maybe, the optimizer approach would be the way to go today. Because if you just, cap everybody at 50% and you run 20, like you're going to have huge exposure rates or you're going to have, a lot of guys you have exposure to. And that's probably the approach you want to do. I mean, we looked at it in the preview. But when you start looking at these last Darlington races and you see the amount of people involved in crashes and involved in wrecks and stuff, let's do that here, and then I'll look at chat and stuff. And, maybe this is completely just destroying the amazing stream I did yesterday, but I think this is just a wild, wild race. Let's just look back at the last, 5, right? Just visually looking through the amount of carnage that we've seen here, okay? Not only are we, having guys, wreck out and stuff, like good team, good drive. Larson, Blaney wrecked out in the spring race, right? Now, Hemrick was still optimal, but he also finished 22nd. Another major issue with a favorite running into an issue here. A guy who was competing for the win, Chris Buescher. Now you could say, Reddick wrecked him, whatever. Still, just statistically speaking, major players involved in the wreck here. And we see the end of this race, your top 2 finishes only led like 70 laps of the event. We look back at last year's cookout race. Who's running into issues here? Bowman, Suarez, McDowell. Okay, you might argue that McDowell isn't a big name, but like I would argue that these are, powerhouse teams running into issues. That's them wrecking out. Hamlin finishes in the back of the field, leads 40. Joe Gibbs just gets crucified out here with Bell and Hamlin, who started first and second, both running issues. So if you entered last year's Southern 500 with, I'm going to fade, truly like, as I said, lap leader A, B, C, and D, like, one of those like top 3 projected lap leaders is probably not even going to finish the race. Like that's the nature of this race here. You look back at Larson and you look back at place differential being pretty huge in this race, just because guys who were supposed to be up front, who should be up front, didn't finish up there. We look back at the Goodyear race in the spring last year. Who ran issues here? A lot of big wrecks here, which I mean, Truex is pretty much the only big name, but Truex and Ross Chastain taken out. You have Kyle Larson, started 7th, finishes 20th, pretty much underperforms. Yet again, we start looking at the amount of primary lap leaders. Like, you're telling me your top finishers in this race led 7, 5, and 3 laps. Everybody else got destroyed in this shorter race. Now, granted, this is shorter, but this is still Darlington. You have so much volatility up top with lap leaders. We go back to this race in 2022, first year with this car. Okay, so you can argue that this is people weren't familiar with how you could race Darlington. They'd only been here once, whatever. Still, Kyle Busch, Cody Ware taken out in this event. Which 2022. Yeah, this is first year of the next gen. Yeah, because it's paid GMS. Major guys up front ran into issues. Okay, like big names ran into issues. That is just the nature of Darlington here. So like, I mean, I'll at least read chat, and then we can look at guys specifically. I mean, I'm just running stuff based on projections, but even then, I think this is a race where honestly projections don't matter. It's going to be very volatile up top. You're going to have huge favorites run into issues. Like, I will say right now, between Larson, Truex, Reddick, Bell, and Hamlin, we can all agree here that these are probably the favorites to win. You can throw in Keselowski, but like, entering this race, I would be shocked for these guys to not be favorites, correct? 2 of these guys are not going to finish this race. That's just how it is. Like, they're going to run into issues DFS wise. And when I say I look at stuff in a DFS perspective. I could care less about what happens in real life. Like when Barry was upside down, I can't explain how much I was rooting for a fatality because I fully believe NASCAR would call the race at Daytona and I was winning the GPP. Like, I only care about DFS here. So when we're looking at these 5 guys here, 2 of them in a DFS perspective will absolutely not work today and probably will finish outside the top 30 in this race. So I'll see what the chat's saying, then we can come back to this. But that's just how we're at here. 82 people here, so that's not too bad. Let's see. What's going on, Sterling? Yeah, I mean, Atlanta rules. Why do people not go to Atlanta? You can get season tickets for like $110. Why would you not go to Atlanta? Don't waste your money at these other shitty tracks. Oh my gosh, you go to Richmond, you're an idiot. You go to Phoenix, you're dumb. Like, only go to Atlanta. You don't think? Okay, so like Jason with like the Dylan thing. I mean, anybody. I mean, these idiots are trying to make their playoff. So like, you're telling me that on top of the volatility that we normally have at Darlington, this has never been the cutoff race. So you're gonna have and honestly, I think we get somebody taking somebody out on the last lap in 3 and 4, whether it's looping them, whether it's like trying to do a slide job and just not like being clear at all. Like, I honestly really hate this race from like an investment standpoint. Like, and this is coming right off of Daytona, where people are like, I'm going to play light at Daytona. I'm just not going to play when you can, like, it's guaranteed money at Daytona. Just play the guys in the back, right? Like, why would you run away from that? And then you're like, last big GPP of the year, I'm going to play a ton at Darlington, where I think this is probably the most volatile race we've seen this year in terms of projected outcomes for each individual driver. So like, I don't see a reason to straight up play Austin Dillon at all. I don't see anything here at all. This is where he's at in these races. Actually, we'll put Austin here, so it's not including Ty. But like this is where Austin Dillon is in these races. Now, Homestead last year, hey, 8th best car. Can't take that away. I have no clue where he finished in that. I really don't pay attention to that because that can change at all. I just like to have a baseline of where people are at. And this is just where he's been at intermediate stuff. We can kind of go through and at least take a gander at where they're at in practice, but still, yet again, like, this is where you have to pretty much, like, if you're looking at practice laps, this is almost what I do. Oh, I got the fucking filter on too. So that's not gonna work. But typically, like, I'll black out others, or not physically do it, but in my head, I'll black out, everything else and just look at what these guys did on a time. So like clearly goes out there, runs 8 laps. That's not what you want to see. Okay. In main adjustment, went back in, made another adjustment, and then at that point, like these laps, regardless of where you're in, group wise, whatever, these are not consistent laps at all. This is up and down. Now, granted, could be in traffic, could be whatever, but like that, just Darlington. I don't see anything from the practice that would be like, I want to play Austin Dillon today. That's where I'm at. But then yet again, you look at the amount of variance, like, I mean, I don't think you need Dillon in like a 20 max exposure. I think I can make that argument for like other people and stuff, like Eric Jones today. We'll use Jones for example, because I'm not playing Dillon. I think Eric Jones is a horrific play projection wise. I think he's horrible. I think he's terrible. Absolutely horrific. We viewed his last win way up here, I believe. That was this one, right? And Eric Jones is good at Darlington, like no lie, but he is driving a hunk of junk machine. Okay, this is where he is in these races. Okay, what needs to happen? And I haven't looked at like other projections. I'm going to assume he's pretty popular because, people want to bet Eric Jones at Darlington. They look at track history and they're like, oh, he's probably good. And I would assume that Eric Jones is probably at like a 5x value in most projection spots. Let's go ahead and just take a look at what I use SaberSim for this. We'll just take a quick look. What does good old SS have for Jones? Because they're usually pretty heavy on track history from what I have seen, and they give you a good baseline of what I think the field is going to do. At least for like place differential plays in like the 7K range, they have him at 36.56. That's a 499 value, which I assume that's probably where other people will have him at as well. I do not think he's going to perform that well. Actually, no, I might just be full of shit because I have him for 36 points. That's hilarious. I like straight up, I would probably not want to play Jones. I think that's ownership that you would want to fade. Now, yet again, variance and stuff, real chance Jones finishes like 11th today, like straight up. I think, and even a race like this, like I don't think ownership is even really important, At least if you can identify like who's going to be the most popular drivers and stuff. And I still think Eric Jones is probably going to outpace Larson, Truex, Reddick, and Bell on ownership, or at least like be similar to what these guys are at, if not more. Which I would assume more, because if that's how I do it in my head too. When we're looking at guys who are expensive, who can potentially lead laps, okay, and you look at somebody like Jones, who's at 74. And I prefer Bowman, but I'm going to assume Jones carries probably more ownership based on track history and stuff here. If we see that, okay, whatever, high 20s for a majority of these guys here, what is the easier guy to build, regardless of who you're using up here? That's like a 7K guy, Jones. So like for me, I think like a tournament play today, like, and really my only take would probably be to have less Jones ownership. Because I think he'll be probably the third, or I think it's going to be like the third most owned. Mike could still be at like 35, 33. I don't think it'll be higher than that, but I typically like taking a stand. I just think Jones is probably I think projection wise, he has a chance of underperforming, despite the fact that I am for like 36 points or whatever. These cars have struggled. They've been terrible. That's kind of my take there. I'm getting distracted. What else we talk about here? Maybe, hopefully, you guys see like kind of where my mindset is on this slate. I don't think I'm trying to be lazy here, but this is just a brutal race to project for, and really say this guy's going to work or not going to work. Let's see. Thank you, Noah. Let's see. Oh yeah, dude. I am glad that the stream was not shut down this time for mentioning Bubba. And yeah, Darrell Wallace is better than Bubba Wallace. Cautions under 7.5. We have 2 guaranteed. Well, let's just take a gander. Let's play a game. What do you guys think? I would lean over. We're going to look at the last 5 races here, and we can use that to just answer this question. I'm going to say over, but we'll take a look. So we're looking at 7.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have one under. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 over, which actually those are quite impressive because 3 of those are the shorter race. So we're probably looking at like 8 yellows today. So that's 8 restarts that each individual driver has to survive. Okay. And not only are those where spots are gained and lost, that's where the wrecks have been in a majority of these races and stuff. Like if we go and look back at where the yellows are in comparison to the runs, we get a 23 lap run, so that's short. Wreck on a restart, run, get long run. Actually, this one wasn't too bad. We didn't wreck on a restart here. 25, 4, 2, 74, 3, 4. I mean, we got a majority of these coming on, or at least a good amount projection wise on restarts here. We got 1, 9, 1, 1, 1. I mean, actually, this is the type of finish that I would imagine us see today. It was just a bunch of shitload of yellows late in the race. Let's see, 20, 7, 8. I mean, this is. Oh yeah, going back to like my Daytona Ram stuff. Like this is a race where I'm like, I would advise you to play less money, like straight up. Like I think this is a potentially like negative EV slate straight up. Like I think this is a brutal slate to play. Let's see. Thoughts on Reddick? I mean, I have nothing negative to say about Reddick at all. And I don't have a favorite between Larson, Truex, Reddick, Bell, and Hamlin. It's just like price wise, like Truex is the cheapest guy. And realistically, Truex's last win will probably come on an intermediate track. In one of the remaining intermediate tracks that we have here. This is probably a situation where I'd probably want to play quite a lot of Truex at like 9,500. But the only thing that's different between these guys are the pricing for them. Like we look at Larson, we look at Truex, we look at Reddick, we look at Bell, we look at Hamlin. I mean, clearly Hamlin's like the most consistent, starting 14th, like already points baked in and stuff. They're all identical plays, and they all kind of cannibalize each other. I don't think that risk is as high this time because, as I said, I think 2 of these 5 guys will just not even finish the race. So, like, that's not really cannibalizing each other if all they're doing is taking those laps away and then, like, removing them from the play in DFS. But those, I don't have a favorite at all. Like, it's Truex based on pricing. They're all projected similar. I have them all projected, like, in the 70s or in the high 60s. Like, why would you not have projections like that high on these individual drivers here? Also, Sheets updated his numbers about an hour ago. So if you have TrueDFS membership, you can also get his stuff and see what ownership and projections he has projected for. Let's see. Thoughts on Barry and Gregson. I don't like Gregson, like gut feel, and maybe this stuff would want to push me to there. I mean, $7,000. That's so. Like how, like realistically, like in this race, and maybe that's an idea that ownership truly will be spread out. Like, is there really a huge difference in the projection, like based on this type of stuff here, right? Just based on, eyeballing of like, oh, Noah can be like, 15th best driver or whatever. Is there really a difference in projection between Noah Gragson at 15th and Bubba Wallace starting the pole? Like, they can score very, very similar and stuff too. So like, my gut answer was like, oh, I'm not a Gregson fan. I see this and I'm like, well, probably I What I got him for. This is why, like, most of the time I don't even know what I have these guys projected for. Let's see what I gave Gregson here, because I might be way higher on Gregson than my gut feel is. I got Gregson at like 32 points. That's like, 20th, 19th. If he does anything more than that, going to be in play. He's going to pass, and yet again, all this stuff is based on where they should finish. Gregson could very easily wreck out, but like Gregson should pass like 10 cars in this race. Gonna compete to like be reaching that 35 points. He needs to hit value. Any individual driver probably needs to, really hit. If you're not a 10K guy, you probably need to hit like a 6.5 value to be optimal today. So like when you start looking at like that type of stuff, like what situations is Gregson finishing here to like get that done? I don't realistically see that. But anyway, I wanted to bring up Barry because I think Barry's I think he's a contender to lead laps today. Not straight up. Like clearly he has to pass a shitload of people to do that. But like, Childers and Barry here, like, and it's not even a situation of like, oh, I wouldn't be shocked to see him. Like, I legit realistically expect Barry to have like 4 laps led at the end of this race. And if he can realistically get that, a yellow can change everything and give him, 50 laps led. Like, I think Barry can realistically lead laps in this race. And he doesn't need a lot of like fluky stuff to happen. And yet again, like, kind of like Barry in the 7K range, I kind of like, Gregson at like 7,000. And then it's like, well, shit, I'll just play the goddamn pole sitter starting first, like in the 7K range. Like, that's why Bubba Wallace is such a good play today, projection wise. Realistically, his hit rate is probably going to be around a 40% success, a 60% fail. And that's probably where his ownership should be at. He should probably be owned anywhere between like 33 to 40%. Anything more than that, he's probably overowned. Anything under that is probably underowned. That's probably where he should line up at because that's his hit rate and his price tag. That's a very, that's a very important aspect of this slate. Anywho, I don't think I've said anything that's like actually helpful in this whole stream. Let's see what else we got. Eric Jones optimal, kind of already mentioned that. Larson on Bell or Larson and Bell? I mean, like would it not shock you, right? I mean, I'll use Bubba Wallace for this example, but you don't have to here. But like, would it shock you to see the optimal lineup have? Let's see if I can. You're telling me end of the day, it's 11 p.m. You're like, oh man, what kind of wild ass lineup was optimal today? And you look, and the lineup that won $100,000 had Bubba Wallace starting first, Christopher Bell starting 9th, Truex starting 5th, Larson starting 4th, which, a bit extreme there, but hey, could have just defaulted like that, Denny Hamlin blows a tire, he's removed, these guys swap the lead up front, even in that lineup, you have $6,400 left over, you get these 2, front row cars down there or something like, I mean, that's a pretty decent line, and that's probably going to project pretty well. You got 4 guys who can lead laps, 2 of them in the 9K range. Like, Bell's a great play. Truex is a great play. Like, I cannot. And actually, like, I probably end up playing more of guys dependent on their salary versus what their projected score is in a slate like this. Maybe not as aggressive as Talladega of like 70% of the field being destroyed, but we're not even talking about like wrecks. Like I mean, this is a fucking catastrophe there. What was that, like 5, like 6 guys here, 5 guys here. This one 3 earlier in the year. But this isn't including guys who are trap laps down. This isn't including people who speed on pit lane, who, get in the wall, break something. NASCAR doesn't throw a yellow. You speed on pit lane during a green flag pit stop, your day's done. It's toast. It's over. There's no coming back from that, So like, there's probably a good chance that like 40% of the field runs to an issue in some form or fashion today that is detrimental to their race. Damage pit lane, yellow, it might even be taken out. But like, if you run into that, 60% of the field is like kind of surviving here. By default, that 60% isn't all going to hit value. So you then start looking at, and this is just me using arbitrary numbers or stuff, but like 40% of the field is like removed from DFS due to issues. 60% is like issue free. You're probably having like 25% of that not even near hitting value or being playable in DFS. So you're then left with like 25% of the field who is competing to be optimal, who are either leading laps or just, being a fantastic DFS play. I mean, that's a pretty small number. We're looking at like 11, 10 guys who out of the entire field who can be optimal, or not optimal, but like survive the chaos in any form or fashion. So if anything, this is almost more volatile than Daytona last weekend from a point per dollar perspective for a lot of these guys. Like, spread ownership out. There should be no favorites at all. Like in your lineups, uh, I just don't think that is the way I'd want to approach this race at all. Let's see. Let's see. I mean, Elliott, probably not playing Elliott straight up. He's $9,000, needs 45 to hit value. Probably at least needs 57 or so to probably really start pushing his way into being optimal. If that's the case, I think you're playing Elliott because you think he's going to win in that lineup. Like he can realistically win in that lineup. If you're playing Elliott based on pure PD, I don't think that's the way I'd use him in this situation. If you're playing Elliott or building lineups or having exposure, like if you're running 20 max, I would probably have like 15, 20% Elliott. That's 4 to 5 lines. Like that's nothing, and your 20 lines, like that's nothing. Okay. This would probably be a really fun slate to do 20 lineups for at like a low stake amount, or even like that stupid 50 cent, like 20% Elliott is probably what you want by default. And you don't even look past that. Like it's, Elliott, 20% ownership. Okay, whatever. That's the ownership I have. 15% on William Byron, and you just move on. 25, 30% on Truex, 25 Larson, 15 Bell, 20 Reddick, 20, 25 Reddick, 35% Bubba Wallace. Like that's how you approach this race, right? Like that's just how you'd approach it in my eyes. Like those are the ownerships that I would want probably just in my stuff, like straight up. Maybe a little bit higher by like 5 to 10 points on each of those, but still like that's how I would approach this race for those guys. So like Elliott, 20% ownership or 20% exposure, and you just move on with your day. Like that's my view there. Even the value range here, like Gill and McDowell are pretty great plays. You look at where McDowell is at and should be at. I mean, real chance. I mean, these are situations where, he did run into issues and stuff, but real chance, like McDowell is going to compete to be like 17th, 18th today. Probably going to use strategy in some form or fashion. Same thing with Gillen. We very rarely ever get the two front row motorsports cars starting right beside each other. Typically, it's one up front, one in the back. It's very rare we have both of them starting this deep in the field and side by side. And so I think the goal for both teams on that regard is or not the approach for both teams, but the upside for both of them is increased because typically they're always trying to do something strategy wise. I would not be shocked to see McDowell and Gillen both run long on the initial green flag pit stop to try and gain track position or to get you lucky on a yellow, or on the opposite end of that, pit way earlier than like Truex and the Joe Gibbs cars. Like the front row guys are prime examples of people who I expect to be off sequence in some form or fashion, which is always good for DFS. You want that from people. Same thing with Suarez starting, wherever the hell he's at, 32nd. Suarez will either be a lap down and out of DFS contention by lap 44, or he's going to get lucky with strategy and he'll be 15th. Like the Suarez's race is determined in the first 50 laps, like straight up. Let's see what else. Bubba just got here. Bubba or no Bubba? You probably want to play Bubba today, Darren. You probably do. Yeah. Dude, Stenhouse is crazy, man. Stenhouse is so bad. This is a Daytona 500 winner. And he's so horrible. like when I think of Darlington, and this is probably irrelevant. This might be a bad thing for me to even say on stream, because when I think of Darlington, I think of Stenhouse spinning out. Like, that's just what he does. He wrecks a shitload here. But everybody's gonna wreck a lot of volatility. You know, is there really truly any risk taking Stenhouse starting 36 when, realistically he's probably gonna have a 23rd, 24th best car at the end of the day? Now the main issue that comes from like Stenhouse and stuff is like, I don't really know where the upside is. Like, we look at Stenhouse starting 36. This is great. He wrecked the car in practice, whatever. That should be fixed. That's not a concern. But like, you look at where he should be at, like, that's like 25th, 26. We're looking at like 25, 26, 27 points from Ricky Stenhouse, and he's a real contender to be one of the guys trapped a lap down in perpetuity in this race. Like, I don't know if Stenhouse ever sees the lead lap once he loses it. So even like with Stenhouse gaining like 14 spots, I mean, that's 33, but that's probably not going to be enough from him at 62, you know? And I would be really kind of worried. I mean, you got Priest here at 56. Like, I kind of want to make sure if I'm playing guys, like, have them start up front. That's why Hocevar is like such a really good tournament play today. Like, Hocevar is in play. Who is he competing against? He's competing against Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Let's say, like, who has an easier time hitting 35 points today? Hocevar or Stenhouse? I think it's, hell, even if it's 60% Stenhouse, that 40% is a huge amount for Carson Hocevar. Like, Hocevar's baseline is probably like 30, 29, 28 points a day. And that's him kind of falling outside the top 10, scripting off some fast laps. If he does anything more than that, he has a way higher likelihood of hitting like 33, 35 points than Stenhouse ever has, than Priest ever has. And that's just this, like, I feel like I haven't said like anything useful in this one here. But I just think that's the slate, man. So, what I'm doing with my numbers and my projections is I'm just trying to fit as many good drivers in my lineup as possible. Like, if I'm ending with like Hamlin, Larson, Wallace, Bowman, like, that's that type of builder. That's where I'm going and stuff. Like, I'm trying to get as many guys who can hit, their higher percentile. Like Alex Bowman seems like a really, really great play today. Honestly, could be a lap leader, whatever, Hendrick Cart, whatever. But he's starting 27th. Realistically, he's going to be like the 12th best car in this race. You start looking at that projection at $7,500, and you start looking at him and like Wallace together, or even say Wallace fails. Wallace is going to Wallace. He messes up in pit lane. His crew lets him down. He gets all sad, and he's like, "Oh man, Mikey, I miss Dale. It's been 25 years, and I'm still crying for Dale Earnhardt." Like, Wallace is losing his mind in the car, right? And then Bowman and Jones are like competing to be optimal together, like that. Like 7K is going to be huge, and I think there's a real chance we see 2 7K guys in this race, especially if we lose a 10K guy. If not 2, like if it's 2, it's like probably guaranteed. But like, God, you're telling me we're gonna get through a race and like Larson and or Reddick and or Hamlin isn't taken out? I don't. The pool's so open, man. I mean, if anybody's like nailing people here, I don't know. At least for me, like I couldn't do that in good conscience, because I have no clue who's really gonna compete in this race. It's probably just trying to get as many guys as I think can realistically hit their, like, their ceiling projections and stuff like that. That's where I would go. I guess past that, let's talk about the plays that I do like. I mean, we've been here. I mean, this is like gut feel of where I'm at here. I like Truex. It's probably my favorite play. I like Wallace. I like Bowman. I like McDowell. Do I like realistically like anybody past that? I don't even know, man. Those are probably the guys I feel the best about in this race. You've waited, an hour to hear that. Those are the picks, I guess. But with a ton of caveats and stuff. Like I think this is a much more build dependent type of slate versus like just pure projections. I personally think it's going to be carnage from DFS perspective. I think we're going to have multiple green white checkers. I think we're going to have guys getting so incredibly stupid. And I think we're going to have probably the dominant car in today's race get wrecked out in some form. And usually, it's easy to enter a race and be like, oh, Larson's, projected to win, run away with the race, whatever. I'm going to fade Larson because I think, he runs into issues. I think, the dominant car runs into issues. I don't even know who that dominant car is to then be like, I'm going to fade driver X because I think he's going to wreck. I don't know the answer to either of those, questions. I don't know who the dominant car is going to be, and I don't know who is going to run into issues. But those two are probably going to be correlated. That's like how difficult this race is. I think this is a vast amount of lineups viable. This is a race where you probably want to play a lot of different lines, but you probably don't want a lot of money on one individual driver. And that's I think that's my takeaway. I don't think I can really do anything. Okay, why, dude? Who cares who Bob Pockrass talks about? Who cares? These shills for NASCAR. Who actually cares? Oh, but Bob Pockrass. The people that Bob Pockrass picked usually wreck out. I don't even care. It does not even matter. You might as well ask a goldfish who he thinks he's going to win today. Like, does that has no impact on my play, on my projections, on track history. Who Bob Pockrass says to win has no impact on anything. I don't care who the Godfather Dave Moody thinks is going to win. I do not care about any of these people. I don't care about what their opinions are. I'm literally just playing DFS, trying to win money based on the projections that I have and salary that is allocated to each individual driver. Like that is where I'm at. Yeah, see, I fell hook, line, and sinker. You threw that line in and you caught a fish. You caught me. Like that's absolutely going to get me like every time. That what else gets me? I can't, Bubba Wallace. I posted a video on Twitter that I posted, a year ago or whatever. And it's so, I think it's freaking hilarious because it's me verbatim saying it would be so nice to root for a Bubba win when I've played Bubba Wallace here at Darlington on several, and I play Bubba Wallace. He's in a fucking 2311 car. Reddick is arguably one of the best cars in the sport right now, and Bubba Wallace cannot find his own ass in these fields. So, like, I have played Bubba Wallace a lot. He nearly never works out, and this is a situation where probably a lot of people are going to play Bubba Wallace today and then be very pissed off when his crew fucks him on pit lane. But it's literally called, it would be really cool to root for a Bubba win as Bubba Wallace loses the win on pit lane at Darlington. I think it's very fitting for this race here. Let's see, what else are we at? Done at SVG. Oh, man, I hate the SVG play straight up. I really do. I think SVG DNFs in this race. I think he breaks a toe link. I think he breaks the right rear toe link, and his day's done. That's my gut feel on SVG. No hate towards the man. He's new. He's running full time, et cetera, et cetera. This is a track that you need to give him experience on. A lot of people shit on Collie. Why is SVG in this race? He needs to get experience. But I think he hits the wall out of 2 and breaks a toe link today. And that's just how it is. And he won't be the only one, but I think SVG is a big contender to DNF this race. And if he doesn't DNF this race, what does that outcome look like? Do we are arguably the most difficult track in the next gen card because of how you can just destroy the car on any small minor issue? If SVG survives this race, that means he was being careful, getting experience. He's not here to win. Like we know that. Like he's not going to compete for anything. So what does a finishing SVG look like? I think that's an SVG who finishes the race, who ran a majority of the race 2 laps down, who probably finishes the race either 1 lap down or on the lead lap due to wave rounds and green white checkers, and who probably finishes like 24th at the end of the day. I don't see him doing anything more than that. So personally for me, I'm not gonna have any SVG today. But that's where I'm at. I haven't mentioned Logano or Chastain. I think I mentioned Chastain a bit, but like we look at Chastain for his price tag, I'll take that. $8,000, on the fringe, top 10 car, I'll take that. We look at Logano. I probably don't play enough Logano. It really hasn't killed me, but this is a race where starting 23rd. Logano's a guy. Jordan McAbee says this a lot, and he is right with Logano. And I just went blank on what he says. I think he says with Blaney too, or Penske in general, but I think he means with Logano. And this is true. Like Logano, it's been decades since he's dominated races. Like he does not finish races with like 200 laps led. Logano wins races that he leads 7 laps in. This is a race that if Logano wins today, he's leading 7 laps. He's there because of the carnage. So like projection wise, probably going to be a terrible play. Probably not even like that lineup is dead in the water, not even near cashing all day. But man, we get to the second green white checkered. It is, 11:15 local time in South Carolina. Logano is starting 4th and he wins the race. Like that's how Logano works. So like I like Logano today. I like Chastain today, not based on projections, but just based on what this race can be. I mentioned Briscoe and Barry. You can go back and listen to it. I made cases for both of them. But yet again, like Barry, if I was running 20 lineups, instant 10% ownership. Chase Briscoe, instant 10% ownership and move on. Like that is my opinion. I have no faith in either one of those guys, but that's like I think Barry's noteworthy. Briscoe, based on where he's starting, is actually not Briscoe. Who the fuck was I talking about? Oh, Gregson. I was talking about Gregson. I'm not playing Briscoe. But like Gregson's there. Like, dude, this slate is like projections are so useless. Projections are so useless on a slate like this. Let's see, Jason. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do the realistic pool of drivers. Okay, it's gonna be a lot, but we'll do that. I'll end the show with that. Realistic pool of drivers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Shit. I don't remember what number I'm on. The pool is probably shit. The pool is probably these guys here. How many people do I have highlighted right now? I have a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Hey, the magic number that I said earlier, probably what you'd want your pull at, probably 24 cars. There's 37 in the field. That means we're not playing mental math, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 drivers probably don't have a chance of being viable in DFS. That's really what it is today. So probably not very helpful. But I think I went over how I would construct lineups. You want as many of those people that I just highlighted in lineups as possible. We understand that you can't just fit in the 10K guys, it's not viable, but like, hey, who's in the 9K that make a lot of sense, who have been up there and have led laps this year, who are like slightly off of getting the lead on pit lane or something. You have a good pit stall or you have a good pit stop. You get the lead. That's Truex, Bell at 93. As I said, I like Bowman but I think Bell and Truex are probably people you want probably a little bit more exposure to than probably what you started with today, based on what they can do in lineups. Bubba Wallace as well. Bubba Wallace will probably be the second or highest owned driver today, straight up. And people are going to tilt. People are going to say racist shit. I can't wait to go through Twitter and Facebook and just see the amount of hate Bubba Wallace gets for when his pit crew screws him here. But Bubba Wallace is a great play today on DFS. This is his best shot to win a race, to get his first career win, and is probably at the most difficult place to do that because you got to survive 4.5 hours here. So that's where I'm at here. And I do believe that's it. Hopefully you guys don't get too screwed when the favorite lap leader gets destroyed. I mean, also, lastly, there's a real worry in my mind that all the lap leaders in this race, like it's 367 laps, there's a real chance the first 330 laps don't even mean anything. Don't even mean a darn thing. All the lap leaders could potentially be taken out. Like if we realistically look at how it should play out, as I said, I expect probably like 14 guys lead laps in this race, whether it's running long or not. Realistically, there's going to be like 5 guys who contend to lead the most amount of laps. And we're probably going to see at least 5 guys lead like 25, 30 laps or whatever. 3 might push like 80 laps. One of them hits the wall, breaks toe link, he's out of the race. The other 2 compete with themselves, very similar to what happened earlier in the spring with, Reddick and Buescher. And this one only had 293 laps. We go a bit longer, and we go into overtime. We're looking like a race that could potentially have like 380 laps in this race, and we just start losing lap leaders. Like we could very easily have, people that have led a percentage of the race and that also finished. Or let me change that. It could be a situation where the amount of laps led that are held by drivers who finished the race could be like 25% of the race. Like we could lose 75% of the green flag laps led to people DNFing and stuff. I think this is a wild race. I've said that a lot this year, and we've seen NASCAR this year be horrifically volatile. Tons of wrecks, tons of people getting stupid. I think this is absolutely leaning into that 80% of the time. I don't see how this race is calm. I don't see how this race goes any way it should. So, like, projections, honest to God, do not matter today. And yeah, I think that's where we're gonna end it. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yeah, Ronnie, don't die, man. I know it's gonna be hot as gonna be really warm over there. Best of luck. Don't die of heat stroke. I'll see you guys in the preview show for Atlanta. Yet again, I will be out of town next week, so I'll be out of Atlanta. I might do a live show, but I doubt I'm gonna have time to do that. But it's Atlanta next week. Football, people are gonna care about NFL Week 1, whatever. Next live show for sure will be the week after, wherever that is. I have no clue what track we're at after Atlanta. I go week by week. But I'll see you guys in that one. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I will talk to you guys later.